Assalamu alaikum, everybody. This is Mr. Mudathir, and in these series of the videos, we're going to talk about systems life cycle. Systems life cycle. All right. So every company or every group of people or every individual that they want to create a system, they would hire someone called a systems analyst. All right, a system analyst. That person is going to go through some of the stages in order to create a system or a software or a program in order to improve the flow of their work or their business or their operation. Okay? All right. let's get started. A systems analysis team is often brought in to review an existing system and suggest a number of improvements. The existing method used may be either a manual, paper-based system, or, more usually, it could already be a computer-based operation that is no longer regarded as adequate for the task. This means that every company or every business or every school or every hospital that they want to create a new system, uh, the existing system could either be manual or paper-based, or they could already have a computer-based system, but it's no longer regarded or it's not up to date, and so on. All right, let's get to the stages to which every system analyst or every IT person or a programmer they go through in order to create a system. Uh, Now, this is the system life cycle, and this is really important. This is actually the basic or the base of this entire unit. Now, the first stage is called analysis. We do analysis in this stage. The next one is design. Third one is development and testing. Next, implementation. Next, documentation. And the last one is evaluation. All right, so let's go through each and every stage. All right, so this figure actually explains to you how or what the analyst, the system analyst, does in this stage. What do? Is that they research or collect data from the current system. They just open the current system and they try to find out how does it work. Describe the current system. Establish the input, output, and processing being done. Well, every system in this world has inputs, outputs, and processing, right? So they figure that out. Number three, identify the problem with the current system. Now that is what they do actually. In order to come up with a new system, they have to figure out what is wrong or what is the problem with the old system. Yeah? All right. Agree the objectives with the clients, either their clients or employees or so or so. They suggest improvements. They suggest, let's say that I want the new system to have this. I want the new system to have, for example, more security facilities. I want the new system to have great colors and it should be more attractive and so on. So they agree on the objectives with either the clients or employees or so. All right. Five, identify and agree on customer requirements. What do the customers want from the system? And it goes on and on. All right. Okay. Now I'm going to jump to the most important tools that a system analyst uses. All right. So they have four tools that they use in order to collect information about the old system and to figure out what is the problem or what was wrong with the old system. They use four tools. As a system analyst, you're going to do observation. Observation. Observation is basically that, as it's defined over here, this method involves watching personnel using the existing system to find out exactly how it works. Yeah. So basically, I'm just gonna grab a chair and sit down, whether it's a big company or a hospital or a school. I'm going to grab a chair, sit down, and observe how the system is working. Okay. The next method is questionnaires. 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 This method involves distributing questionnaires to the workforce, clients, or system users to find out their views of the existing system. and to find out how some of the key tasks are carried out. Well, questionnaires, mostly questionnaires are used in restaurants and in hotels. It's that annoying piece of paper that they give you once you walk into the restaurant, and it has questions about, like, for example, if you're in a restaurant, they ask you questions about how did you find the food, how is the ambiance, and did it take a lot of time for you to get your order? So those kind of papers that you get when you walk into restaurants or maybe hotels or hospitals, they're called questionnaires. They want to find out how the clients or the customers are getting their services or their goods. Was it like, did they wait a lot of time? Did they find any trouble? Were the employees like they were conveying the messages? Were they helping them out to find out what they want, and so on and so on. Now the third method is interviews. The third method is interviews. Interviews is like a face-to-face kind of a question and answer. This method, interviews, involves a one-to-one question and answer sessions between the analyst and the employees or the customers. It's a good method if the analyst wants to probe deeply into one specific aspect of the existing system. Now let's go to the last method, looking at existing paperwork. Well, every company or every organization or every firm, they keep a big cupboard or maybe bunch of cupboards where they keep their old paperwork. For example, if it was a school, they would have a record of every single student and every single teacher that they had or they worked with or they taught, or a student that was in the school on that file inside that cupboard. So as a system analyst, I'm going to go open those cupboards and try to figure out how did the system go. Yes, this method allows the analyst to see how the paper files are kept. That is called file storage in computers, right? Look at the operating instructions and training manuals, check the accounts, and so on. It allows the analyst to get some ideas of the scale of the problem, memory size requirements, type of input and output devices needed. Yeah? Okay, so those are the four tools that a system analyst uses: observation, questionnaires, interviews, and looking at existing paperwork. In other books, it's called examining existing paperwork. All right, let's get into some of the advantages and disadvantages of each and every one. Let's start by interviews. All right, interviews, is it the first one? Sorry, observation. Observation. The first one is observation. The analyst obtains reliable data. While observing, the analyst obtains reliable data, a data that the analyst can rely on. It cannot be incorrect because he observed it, he saw it with his own eyes, right? So it's considered reliable data. It's possible to get an overview of the system. It's really possible so that you can get an overview or an overall view of the system. Last advantage of observation is a relatively inexpensive method. Why is it inexpensive? Because only one system analyst can do that. And it could take one day, right? I don't have to hire like 100 employees to do that. I can only hire one person, one system analyst to do the observation. Now let's jump to the disadvantages of this method. While while you have a system analyst sitting around and observing people, people are generally uncomfortable being watched and may work in a different way. Well, this is a universal fact. When you have someone watching you, you would definitely feel uncomfortable. That is one disadvantage of observation. The next one is if workers perform tasks that contravene uh, if workers perform tasks that contravene standard procedures, they may not do this while being watched. This means that if you have someone watching you, maybe you will do your best performance that day, right? So employees or workers may perform tasks that contravene standard procedures. They may not do this while being watched. For example, you may take like a whole hour just getting a cup of coffee, but if you know someone's watching you, you're not going to do that, right? All right, let's get to the next tool that system analysts use: questionnaires. All right, advantages is that the questions can be answered quite quickly. That's an advantage. It's a relatively inexpensive method. It doesn't cost you a lot of money because you can print out let's say 2,000 papers of questionnaires or maybe 10,000 papers of questionnaires and just hand them out to people, and then later on you can collect them and study them, right? It's not expensive at all. Individuals can remain anonymous if they want. Now, what does this mean? When you're writing a questionnaire, you don't actually write your name. So you would give your honest opinion about this. Yeah? Individuals can remain anonymous if they want. You have the option to write your name, and you can just skip your name out, right? This method allows quick analysis of the data. You can grab all the questionnaires and you can just read them very quickly, and you can find out that where is the problem. For example, the food was not good that day, so you would know that your issue is with the chef, or maybe uh, a lot of people said that they didn't get the food on time. It took them a lot of time to deliver the food. So you would know that it's the problem is with the food delivery system. Now let's get into the disadvantages. The number of return questionnaires are often low. That means you can distribute like a 10,000 pages of questionnaires, and you can only get like 1,000, right? That's one disadvantage. Not everyone has the time to fill up questions about a restaurant or a hospital that they go to, right? Number two, the questions are rather inflexible since they have to be generic. Usually in questionnaire, we ask yes or no questions, or we ask, could you evaluate the food, for example, from 1 star to 5 stars? So you only have to tick which star exactly that food deserves. So the questionnaires are generic and rather inflexible. You can like if you ask them, could you evaluate the food? They'd give you 5 stars, but they wouldn't exactly tell you what was good about it, right? You can't get into details when you're using questionnaires. There is no immediate way to clarify a vague or incomplete answer to a question, and that's very clear. You cannot clarify any answer or any question in that questionnaire. Now that was questionnaire. The third one is interviews. Now let's find out what are the disadvantages of questionnaires. It gives the opportunity, this is actually an advantage, okay? An advantage is it gives the opportunity to motivate the interviewee into giving open and honest answers to the analyst's questions. It gives the opportunity to motivate the interviewee. The interviewee is the person that you are asking the questions, the person that you are interviewing. You give them the opportunity to give an honest answers. Okay, the next one is it allows the analyst to probe for more feedback from the interviewee. It is easier to extend a question. For example, you can ask them, "How was the food?" They would tell you, "Well, it was all right." Then you can ask them a follow-up question. "You said it was all right, but how could it be better? How can we make the food better?" Right? Next and the last one in advantages is it's possible to modify questions as the interview proceeds and ask questions specific to the interviewee. You can always ask follow-up questions. You can always modify your questions. You can always, it's a conversation, right? So you basically, if you want any piece of information, you can get it out of them. Now let's get into the disadvantages. It can be a rather time-consuming exercise. Why do you think interviews are time-consuming? Because if I need to create a system for a company that has, let's say, 200 employees or 200 teachers, I'm going to have to sit with each and every one of them. So I'm going to have about 200 interviews, and one interview can take half an hour, right? So that's like it could go up to a week, a whole week. I'm going to waste my time interviewing those uh, employees or teachers or whatever the people that I am interviewing. So it's very expensive. I can, instead of having one person to interview all those 100 employees or 200 employees, I can hire 10 people so that I'm going to have to pay them so that I can get the job done, right? The interviewee can't remain anonymous with this method. If I'm interviewing a person, I would definitely know. I would definitely know who is sitting in front of me. Yeah. So sometimes when you're asking someone, if I ask you about your friend, you can't be entirely honest with everything that I ask you about your friend because maybe you have an issue with him or with her, and you don't want to lose that friend, right? If I ask the teacher about another teacher, if they are colleagues, maybe they will not give me full information about them. Usually, we don't like to talk about people behind their back, right? They have to be there. Well, it's a cultural thing. The last tool that the system analysts use is looking at existing paperwork. All right, let's get into the advantages. This method allows information to be obtained, which wasn't possible by any of the other methods. Well, we can get information with this method that we couldn't get in all the other three methods: interviews, questionnaires, and observation. Well, looking at existing paperwork gives you information that you cannot obtain using any of the other methods, right? The methods. Now, the next advantage is that analysts can see for themselves how the paper system operates. You can actually see the papers, you can actually see the system. Now, what about the disadvantages of looking at existing paperwork? It can be a very time consuming exercise. It's a time consuming exercise. If you have a company that's, let's say, a school that's 10 years old, so they've been working for 10 years, and every year they get new students, and for every student they have a big file with, let's say, birth certificate, um, parents' information, ID cards, report cards, and so on and so forth. So it's very time consuming. You have to go through all the papers for all the students or all the patients if you're working with a hospital, or all the clients if you're working at a company that sells goods, and so on. Now, the next disadvantage is because of the analyst's time needed, it is relatively expensive method to use. It's relatively expensive because if the company is like a new company, it won't be expensive because they wouldn't have a lot of paperwork, right? Or existing paperwork, right? But if the company is like 20 years old, it's going to be very, very, very time consuming, and it's going to consume all the time for the system analyst to review all the work. Well, this is it with all the four tools that a system analyst uses. We now know each and every one of them. What are they? How to do them? And the advantages and disadvantages of each and every one of them. Yeah. All right. So now we're going to jump. We're still in the analysis phase, and we're going to jump into something called DFD. DFD is one of the methods that an analyst uses in order to analyze a system. All right. Let's get to it. One of the stages mentioned was the production of data flow diagram, or DFD. DFDs help the analyst by showing the data flow. It shows the data flow, number one. Next, it shows input and output requirements. Next, it shows processing and the types of data storage needed. It shows, number one, data flow, input and output requirements, processing, and the types of data storage needed. Now that is what the data flow diagram shows. Now here I have a data flow diagram that shows if you are trying to book or reserve a flight ticket, um, and you're going somewhere and you don't want to go to an office or something, you want to do that online. Now let's try to study this data flow diagram. All right, in this method, a customer makes a flight inquiry. Well, I picked up my phone and I called, let's say, Tarco or whatever uh, airways flight that we have, and I want to fly, let's say, to Dubai or New York or whatever. And then I made an inquiry. I opened the phone and I said, I'd like to book a flight for from Khartoum to Riyadh, for example. Yeah. So the operator is going to check details. They are going to input the details. Okay. They're going to check for the schedule. All right. Of course, they're going to ask me, when exactly do you want the flight to be? Let's say I gave them the date and time. Let's say next Friday. It doesn't matter if it's morning or evening. I'm very flexible, but I need the flight to be on Friday. So they're going to check the schedule if they have available flights that day, and then they're going to input the details. Flight details are input by customers. Next, if they do have flights on that date, they're going to collect the data and make confirmation. Also, booking system, of course, they save all your information on a database that's stored on a hard disk drive. Yeah. Then they're going to make the flight data is collected and confirmed, confirmation made. All right. This means that we do have seats available on Friday. They have already collected my information. They have stored my information. They checked the schedule and everything. And now confirmation is made. Next, now it's 100% confirmed, and then an e-ticket is issued. E-ticket is issued. E-ticket is a soft copy that can be sent via email or WhatsApp nowadays. You don't have to go and collect um, a hard copy of your ticket. Yeah. So those are the things that happens if a customer wants to reserve or book a flight via phone or online methods or so on. Now this is the DFD for a system that books tickets, flight tickets. Okay, so today in this video we learned about the 6 stages of the system analysis or system life cycle, which are analysis, design, development and testing, implementation, documentation, and evaluation. Now remember, those are like the most important thing in this unit. You have to memorize them by heart. Analysis, design, development and testing, implementation, documentation, and evaluation. And now we know what is a system analyst, who is a system analyst, and what do we do while analyzing the current system, right? We analyze the current system in order to find out what is wrong with that system and how we can improve it. Now, a system analyst uses 4 tools so that they can analyze and try to find out what's wrong with the current system. They use observation, questionnaires, interviews, and looking at existing paperwork. And we also went through all the advantages and disadvantages of all those 4 methods. And lastly, we learned about the DFD, data flow diagram. Data flow diagram shows a data flow diagram shows the data flow, input and output requirements, processing, and the types of data storage needed. Okay, in the next video, we're going to move to the next phase, which is design. We're done with the analysis stage. Now we're going to, or later, we're going to the next stage, which is design. Thank you very much. Have a good day.